I'm hoping that works.
Fingers crossed.
Your fingers crossed.
Well, welcome to the IISS-US office. Now I'm going to rephrase that because acronyms are bad and acronyms with 3 S's are even worse. Welcome to the Washington office of the International Institute for Strategic Studies. I'm Dana Allen, a senior fellow for U.S. Foreign Policy and Transatlantic Affairs, and I'm editor of our journal Survival. I'm usually based in London, but I'm spending the fall working out of this branch of our institute while teaching a course at Johns Hopkins SAIS. For those of you, and as I say this, the world moves on, and I realize it's probably not a majority of you, but those of you who are as old as I am will have come to know the IISS as a Cold War and primarily transatlantic think tank. Now, as transatlantic senior fellow, I certainly don't want to say that focus and that set of problems is outdated. I mean, the Cold War is over, but the importance of transatlantic issues is not. But at the same time, one of the things that we have done at the IISS, and we're proud of having done in the last 15 to 20 years, is to broaden the presence and the focus of the Institute to address the really tectonic shifts of global strategic power and global challenges. We have an active office in Singapore devoted to Asia-Pacific issues. We have a Middle East office in Bahrain. We convene major and important paradiplomatic conferences in both places. And our subject and our speakers today also reflect this broadening, starting with Sanjaya, who is based in India, while directing this institute's Geo-economics and Strategy program, which is conducted mainly in Bahrain. Sanjaya was a former spokesman and media advisor to the Indian Prime Minister, and he has had a distinguished career in financial journalism as editor of the Business Standard and as chief editor of the Financial Express. Secretary William Cohen, known to all of you, chairman and CEO of the Cohen Group, Secretary of Defense under President Clinton, after a career in both houses of Congress representing the state of Maine. He's also the author of 11 books, fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, including the most recent political fiction that is reviewed in the latest issue of my journal, unless you've written another one. And last but not least, George Perkovich is Vice President for Studies and Director of the Nuclear Program at the Carnegie Endowment. He's also author of a number of books, including India's Nuclear Bomb, and a very important IISS Adelphi paper, Abolishing Nuclear Weapons. He's a co-author of this book, which we published 4 years ago. He was also a speechwriter and foreign policy advisor to then Senator Joe Biden. Now, I spoke of the IISS transatlantic legacy, and we also, of course, have a nuclear legacy that's reflected, for example, in the title of the journal I edit. Our nuclear work in recent years has been strong, especially on proliferation issues. And of course, the proliferation angle is one way that we have assessed India and U.S. Indian relations. Some proliferation experts, of which I'm not one, but some have clearly crossed with the Indians and also crossed with the direction of U.S. Indian policy under consecutive U.S. administrations on this key issue, and this panel is going to address this issue. But needless to say, it is not the only matter of importance in regards to India and Indian foreign policy. And I think we'll agree that our speakers today are uniquely qualified to address both the proliferation issue, but also to put that question in the context of much broader policies and strategic developments. So I'm going to ask each of our speakers to speak for just 10 minutes, and then we'll have time for 30 minutes of discussion, starting with Sanjaya. Is that what was agreed with? Not in my presence?
Well, this is the first I've heard, but I'm trying to think of the appropriate metaphor if I'm going first, because usually somebody says a positive proposition and then somebody says, yeah, but, and I'm the yeah, but on this issue. So we'll invert the order of it. I was anticipating that Sanjaya would probably, or others would probably in a sense, elaborate the case that India is a very constructive actor and can be a very constructive actor in the overall nuclear order and in the non-proliferation regime, and that's basically, the set of arguments that were made to open the U.S. India nuclear cooperation arrangement and diplomacy related to that between 2005 and then 2008, when the nuclear suppliers group agreed to waive their rules. And most of you are familiar with the argument that because India's trend is democracy, it's a responsible state, changing the rules, waiving the rules, and doing nuclear cooperation with them will benefit the overall nuclear non-proliferation regime, and that skepticism about that and doubt about that should be set aside because India actually is a very constructive player and it's not a proliferator. I thought somebody else was going to make all those arguments because my job is usually to say, as I said at the beginning, yeah, okay, fine, but so imagine you heard those arguments, and then I was going to say, well, what are we really trying to get at when we ask the question about India and the non-proliferation system? Because I think if the question is India a good actor or a bad actor when it comes to proliferating its nuclear knowledge, technology, or material to other countries, I'd say, yeah, the answer is largely positive. That especially at the level of state of intention, the Indian state doesn't intend to allow proliferation of sensitive nuclear know-how or technology or material from India. They don't want other states to get nuclear weapons, and I think that that's very clear. Where the questions begin to arise, and I think deserve a lot of attention, is over how effective the relevant Indian state institutions are in actually implementing those intentions. I mean, the Indian state doesn't function very well in any domain. And I don't say this pejoratively, it's descriptive. I mean, read the Indian press, go to India, listen to what Indians talk about. Whether it's the power blackout affecting 600 million people, the delivery of health services, building of infrastructure. Sanjaya can, he knows much more about this than all of us combined. So the question you have to ask is that state's performance much greater in managing sensitive nuclear technology and enforcing export controls and customs and all of those things? Is it much more effective in that domain than it is in any other domain? And somebody might argue that it is, and I'd be very interested to hear that, but I think, that pending that kind of evidence, one would be concerned about that. And so then the question becomes, all right, how committed is the state to actually exercise leadership, provide the resources necessary to turn its good intentions in this domain into actual performance at the state level? How big a priority would this be? Now, then again, you have to say, okay, the growth rate has gone down to about 5.5%, which is a little above kind of break-even with population growth. Huge energy infrastructure problems, all of the problems, challenges of the Indian state, then where's this one gonna rank? And actually, I'll talk in a minute about evidence from the nuclear power domain about where this issue ranks. In fact, let me do that now. The big reason to do the nuclear cooperation agreement was, India wants to build a lot more nuclear power capacity, and it was going to do a lot of importing to meet those targets, importing whether from the U.S. or Russia or France, Japan. And almost none of that's happened for a variety of reasons. They still haven't made the liability law in India conform to international standards. This is not just an issue for the United States. It's a big issue for the Russians. It's a big issue for the French. There are public protests around much of the facilities. A bunch of different difficulties. But what has always been a great concern to me is that what we learned from Fukushima, we learned from other places, it's very important to have an independent safety regulatory body in the nuclear domain. If you're going to have nuclear power plants, you need to have the people who monitor those, define the standards of safety, make sure those standards are being implemented. They have to be knowledgeable, they have to be truly independent, they have to be strong, they have to be plentiful, and so on. We saw in Japan that that didn't happen. The Japanese government has admitted that that body was captured by the builders, basically, of nuclear power, and this is a big explanation for the failure. Well, those of us who work on India have always known that the Indian Atomic Energy Regulatory Body is totally captured by the Department of Atomic Energy. It's not independent at all. In the past, when it's gone out and done an inspection, basically nothing's been done about them. They've been ignored. So now what's interesting is after Fukushima, and to India's credit, more and more information is coming out about this. So Indian bodies are now investigating and reporting that indeed the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board has no autonomy. It has no capacity really to implement safety standards. That just yesterday, the day before, in a paper that Sanjaya used to edit, I think, there was an article detailing recent discoveries by inspectors of lapses in safety, medical procedures, infrastructure, throughout the nuclear power plants that were visited by inspectors. So this is a real problem. And the question is that if that's a problem in a sector that's well known, that the public depends on for nuclear power, where there's a lot more attention that's been drawn to it. If the state doesn't function in maintaining kind of safety and the kind of vigilance that would be necessary there, then again you have to then wonder about state capacity in customs and monitoring vendors and manufacturers of sensitive technology that would be important from the non-proliferation point of view. So the concern there is about implementation. There's a related issue, which is from 2005, 2008, we had this paradox that people here, especially advocating nuclear proliferation, well, India's a friend, it's great, it's totally responsible, it's a democracy, all of which are true. And so therefore, because they're going to take non-proliferation seriously, we should really pay them off. And so they should get this payoff. And implicit in that was kind of, well, if we don't make this deal and pay them off, they'll be irresponsible in the nuclear power domain. But if that were the case, then what about the foundation of the whole argument, which is that they're responsible? So to my mind, the idea, and when raising the question about, okay, is India a responsible stakeholder in nuclear non-proliferation enterprise, is, at the level of intention, yes, but that's what everybody should be, and so let's move on to implementation. Last 2 points. Does India share U.S. and other states' interest in strengthening the non-proliferation regime? That's a little bit different than, does India try hard on it within its own territory? But this is about strengthening the regime overall, and this comes to the fore in India's desire to be a member of the Nuclear Suppliers Group, which I don't need to reverse here. India's pushing hard to be a member of that group. And then the question is, I thought of it the other night during watching the convention when somebody talked about a candidate saying, they wanted to have the job, but it's not clear they wanted to do the job. And I think with India, it wants to be in the NSG, but it's not clear that it wants to strengthen the NSG. All of the evidence thus far is when the NSG in the last few years has moved to strengthen its guidelines, India has resisted this from the outside and decried it. The reason why India wants to be in the NSG are clear and understandable, and I support them. The recognition, status, not to be on the outside. But there's an issue here. The NSG operates by consensus. So there are 46 members now. If India comes in, it will be the 47th. It will be the only one that's not party to the Non-proliferation Treaty. It will be the only one that hasn't signed the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. And it opposes a number of the measures that the NSG has adopted. So now we have to say, if the U.S. and others want to strengthen the controls of the nuclear suppliers group, and India were a member, it could block consensus and keep that strengthening from happening. Now, there's no evidence that India would want to encourage such strengthening. And I think until that happens, until you get a sense that India is on the same page with those that want to strengthen the non-proliferation regime, that time should be taken before invading India because of this consensus. And I'll say for the Q&A a question that Nick Burns and others have been raising about India's cooperation with the U.S. in enforcing non-proliferation as seen in Iran, in the case of Iran. We're actually on that one more sympathetic to the Indian position than perhaps a lot of its dismayed friends like Nick Burns also.
Thank you very much, George. And Secretary Cohen.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I came at least prepared to talk in the sense of the broader relationship between the United States and India, but apparently this has been narrowed down to did the United States really make a mistake in providing and approving the civil nuclear agreement over the objection of people like George, like the Economist magazine, like the New York Times, and others who advocated strenuously against it. So I'm not sure what the issue is today. Namely, George indicated, well, we know that they are not a known proliferator, but basically saying that they're essentially incompetent, that bureaucratically they have little control over their electrical supply grid, little control over their export regime, and frankly, very little in the way of economic distribution of wealth in the country. And so I guess the issue is, did we make a mistake in going forward with the civil nuclear agreement? And if you think that's the case, well, the next issue is, well, what do we do about it? The fact is that this is a decision that was made at great political expense, both on the American side and certainly on the India side. Prime Minister Singh had a great deal of heavy water to carry in order to get the approval on the Indian side, and certainly George Bush pushed very, very hard to make this all possible. Nick Burns was very much involved as a strong advocate for going forward. I must say, from my perspective, looking at it, it was really a question, is the payoff? I wouldn't call it a payoff. The United States was looking for a way to strengthen and enlarge its relationship with India. The civil nuclear agreement really was seen as a way of helping India deal with its energy production challenge, with the hope that this would open up a whole new relationship with the United States. It had gone certainly from ground zero in 2000 when President Clinton made that trip to India and spent, I think, 4 or 5 days on the ground in India. That was a turning point. And certainly when President Bush picked up the responsibility of trying to build and improve this relationship with India, that was a point that we all took into account, saying, how do we enlarge the situation from a strategic point of view? Not only from an economic or commercial point of view, but from a strategic point of view. Is this a relationship the United States should try to really build and expand? Frankly, the civil nuclear agreement was a vehicle by which I think a number of us, myself included, saw this as a really unique opportunity to try and build upon that. Frankly, it made a case of our aspirations outrunning the reality. We, at least some of us, saw this nuclear agreement as being kind of the floor of the relationship with India, not a ceiling. And we've been disappointed. Frankly, our hopes have not been certainly matched with the reality of the situation, and we've been disappointed. And perhaps we've been too manic, and now we have to avoid being too depressed about the process. But there are a lot of good stories that we told. I mean, pro and con here. We had hoped that it would open up a new relationship from a strategic point of view, certainly on a military relationship. And frankly, that has been quite positive. We exercise more jointly with the Indian military than any other country. It's not something that is either well known or wants to be well known throughout India, perhaps, because it might send the signal that both India's non-aligned status is somehow being compromised by such activity. But it's important given India's geopolitical strategic position and our interests as well. So military has gotten much better. And I think all of us have benefited from that relationship. Have we been disappointed in terms of the NRCA? Yes. We were disappointed to see that India rejected two of the finest fighter aircraft in the world, combat F-18 and F-16. And the rationale didn't really measure up to a responsible answer. Nonetheless, I mean, we saw that really as a reaction and the rejection by the Indians as saying that they still lack trust in the United States. They wanted to keep something of an arm's length. I like to call it the Heisman Trophy treatment. Here's the Heisman to you. We want you to stay back, not too close. And we're going to do some business with you. We're doing this now $8 billion worth of business with the United States, significant. And yet there's still this ambiguity about the relationship in terms of what it could be. To give you an example, in Maine we have an expression, the way life should be. And you could point to a joint venture with Lockheed Martin and Tata. They have a joint venture to make the C-130J engine. I visited the plant facility. It is fabulous. This is consistent with what India wants, what we want. India wants to develop an indigenous capability that will allow them to produce a product and also export. So one would think that this is the kind of model. I'm sorry. I didn't intend to. I'll see you soon. And so this was seen, for us at least, it seemed to be a model. And yet India has really backtracked. Just to get back to some of the issues George you talked about, where here you have a model of how you produce or create jobs in India, how you create an indigenous capability, how you potentially have an export capability of a very sophisticated piece of equipment, and yet suddenly the government then goes and starts to impose retroactive taxes. Vodafone being the most classic example. Or inconsistent interpretations and implementation of offset, which is a big issue as far as our defense and aerospace industry is concerned. And a number of steps taken that are really quite retrograde and I think pretty devastating to the Indian economy. And you have a political system, which I don't want to get too much into India's political system, but we've got our own problems here at home. But in India, we're looking at a system which is basically dysfunctional, that a decision cannot be made. And certainly you won't have an election for 2014. So what's going to take place in the meantime? So we have those issues you raised legitimately on that side of things. India could point to us and say, we're taking a look at your system. We don't see many decisions being made here either. So there's not trying to just point the finger in one direction. So this relationship, I was really trying to summarize it. We used to talk about NATO dissension, whether NATO will NATO with it. And I think the same thing that we said about India, whether India and the U.S. will work with it. And a lot has to be done in terms of whether we're really dedicated to expanding this relationship. So to go back to the issue of nuclear proliferation, what has been the record? Has India been a proliferator? Answer no. Do they have adequate controls to prevent proliferation in the future? We have bet that they will have. If they don't have, they will have. That this is something that is vital to their security as well as the world's So we can't go back and unring that. India is having enough problems now. If you were to say, we can't trust you given your current situation, we can't trust you in the future, therefore we simply must give up your nuclear power altogether and find alternatives. I think that is a solution for India today without the prescription for economic growth. And so we're kind of locked in this position now. What do we do from this point forward? With respect to non-proliferation, would they be as aggressive as one would hope in stopping proliferation in the future? And you cited Iran, by the way of example. Actually, India has been, under the circumstances, quite provocative in coming out and imposing sanctions, not as serious as the United States would like to have them imposed. But nonetheless, given the dependence that India has upon supply of energy coming out of Iran, given the fact that Iran is also important for India in dealing with Afghanistan, the steps they have taken have been quite important. And that has been recognized by Secretary Clinton, who praised India, given the differences we may have on other issues, but praised India for its efforts in reducing the level of oil that they purchase from Iran. And also earning praise, certainly from the Defense Department, may not sound like a great deal, but for Secretary Clinton to have appointed the Deputy Secretary of Defense as the point man on a relationship, pretty important. Also praising India for what it's doing in Somalia, what it's doing in helping combat piracy, what it's doing in Afghanistan, certainly $2 billion worth of economic assistance there. And I think it is, as a result of that, when it came time to impose these sanctions on countries, India got a waiver. A waiver that was not granted to either China or Singapore. So we are where we are. The situation in India needs to produce more energy. They have been relying in some part upon nuclear power. And if you want to say that they no longer can be trusted because of incompetence or deficiencies or lack of security or safeguards, then I think the issue is, well, I guess you have to see that this is dismantled and replaced with something else. I don't think that's realistic, and I think we just have to listen to the arguments that have been made. These are exactly the arguments that were made before the vote. They continue to be made now, but it seems to be past that point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Secretary Cohen and George. Sorry for reversing the order, but I knew exactly what George was saying. And therefore I thought I should have the privilege of trying to respond, because I have heard him say this in 2000, and then in 2001, and 2002, and 2003, and we are in 2012. So we know the arguments of what my guru, K. Subramaniam, used to call the Ayatollahs of non-proliferation. So, in a sense, I would be going over very familiar ground for those of you who are aware of this debate that's been going on between India and the non-proliferation lobby in the United States. It's, as Secretary Cohen ended by saying, it's because that group failed to convince President Bush that we got the nuclear deal. And incidentally, President Obama didn't vote for the nuclear deal when he was a senator in the U.S. Congress. So there's some disappointment here that some of the expectations of the deal were not met. I think part of it could be political, that we didn't vote for it, so why should we get the benefits of it? It's the Republicans who gave the nuclear deal, largely. Many Democrats were actually persuaded by what George said. But the turning point in that negotiations, I must first of all say I work as a colleague of Dana at the IISS, but on this panel I speak as an Indian and not as a staff member of the IISS, because we are talking about Indo-US relations. The turning point in that entire debate was the 25th of March 2008. At a point when we almost thought this deal would not happen, because the opponents of the deal in the US had succeeded in putting up so many conditions that India was not in a position to meet them. And the turning point was the 25th of March when John Kerry, Senator John Kerry, came and met Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and told him, you better get this deal when the Bush administration is still in office, because I can tell you that next election we are winning, and when we come to office, we won't be able to do this deal for you. I was present, I was a witness to this conversation. And Senator Kerry, I'm now told from the gossip in Washington, may be our next Secretary of State. But he did say this, that the Democratic Party, which would win the elections in 2008, would not be in a position to deliver the deal. And therefore, if India wanted it, they better wrap it up. And which is why, starting 26th of March, over a 6-month period, everything was put into fast motion, and finally by November 2008, we had the NSG approval. Now, there are two sets of questions, and I don't have time because we have only 10 minutes and I'm sure you have a lot of questions. So there are two issues I'll address. One is the whole issue of India's record. You know, think of the whole nuclear debate from an Indian point of view. In the 1970s and 80s, the United States works with China, makes China or agrees to China's membership of the U.S. Security Council, accepts China as a nuclear power in the NPT, works with China on a range of issues. And India is not given the privilege of entering the NPT as a member as a nuclear weapons power. People keep saying, oh, India is not a signatory to the NPT. Nobody asks, why was it not a signatory to the NPT? It was not a signatory because it was not allowed to enter as a weapons power, because there was a freeze on the membership, 5 countries, and there was an arbitrary freeze. We live in the world of power relations. A set of guys decide these are the rules. That doesn't mean everybody accepts it. Only those who don't have the power to change the rules accept rules. The moment you begin to have power to change rules, you change those rules. And that's precisely what India has tried to negotiate, which is to change the rules in a way in which it would allow recognition of India as a nuclear weapon power. Any country would do that. Question is, why did the Republicans, why did the Bush administration agree to change the rules? The answer to that, very briefly, is partly what Secretary Cohen has already said, that India's track record against much of what George has said, and we've been saying it for a long time. The fact is that if there are any proliferators in the world in the last 30 years, it was actually China and the US. Because the 3 countries which became nuclear, which acquired nuclear capability, North Korea, Pakistan, and Israel, acquired that capability with help from one or the other of these 2 NPT signatories. The entire Indian program was an indigenous program. Pakistan is a nuclear weapons power today because both the US and China, the US tolerated the proliferation and China was part of the proliferation. North Korea is a nuclear weapon because China is part of the proliferation. So when the so-called 5 NPT powers were proliferating, to say that, oh, India should not be there because it could proliferate without any evidence of any proliferation in the past, I think is a bit thick. Even with Iran, the Indian position has been very clear. India does not want to see nuclear Iran. And the day there is evidence of actually Iran going nuclear, India would certainly take the steps along with the rest of the world to prevent that. But given the fact that the international community and the IAEA, etc., are not yet convinced that Iran is there, India is not doing anything different from other P5 countries, particularly Russia and China and the other BRICS countries. So I think the Iran argument is a red herring. Again, it was a huge issue in the run-up to the nuclear deal. At that time, I was in government as the spokesperson, and half my time was spent, particularly with US media, in giving them facts because there's a lot of distortion of facts going on the India-Iran relationship. Finally, on the question of capability, capacity. There is a, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the facts, but the fact is that in the run-up to the nuclear deal, India agreed to a range of commitments which satisfied the Bush administration, which satisfied the nuclear suppliers group. There is no evidence to suggest that India in the NSG would play a spoiler role. In fact, India's role in the entire global nuclear system has been one to work with the system to prevent further proliferation, because the fact is that India today is the single biggest victim of proliferation. Because our security problem has been completely changed by Pakistan acquiring nuclear capability due to Chinese and American proliferation. And therefore, having been a victim of proliferation by others, I don't see any Indian government proliferating into the region or in the Western world. Who would be proliferating? Any of the Islamic countries? No chance. Unless you're completely ignorant of Asian geopolitics and India's security threats and perceptions, and where India is in the world and where she sees a problem from. To imagine that India would allow any other, we didn't want Pakistan to become a nuclear weapon power, but it did, but I don't think India would want any other country in Asia, in Central Asia or West Asia or Middle East, to acquire nuclear capability. So there's no question to proliferate there. Then would we proliferate into Southeast Asia? Again, for reasons I can go into. There's absolutely no, so who would we proliferate to? It's not very clear. Anyway, I'll leave the proliferation argument there. But finally, in 2 minutes, let me address the issues about the disappointment after the nuclear deal. As I said, I think there is not adequate appreciation in the US that of what went into the nuclear deal, the politics here in Washington. And given the politics of the nuclear deal, the IOUs are all being held by people who are not in positions of power today. They will encash them, I'm sure, when they come back to power. But in any bilateral transaction, there are IOUs. And ask the question, who holds those IOUs with India? That I did this for you, what are you willing for me? What are you willing to do for me? So who are those guys who did things for us? And as Secretary Cohen would affirm, in defense and many of the business, many of the IOUs have actually been encashed. There are many American companies which have benefited from the encashment of those IOUs. I can give you a long list of examples. The MMRCA didn't happen for reasons, again, I don't have time today, but I can talk about that. But that was an exception. The rule was that there's been a fundamental change in the India-US defense relationship. A fundamental change. In the last 5 years, there's been a huge increase in purchase of defense equipment across the three forces, Army, Navy, and Air Force. And therefore, many of the IOUs there have actually been encashed. Policy paralysis in Delhi, I can talk about that till I was come home to or we can talk about that. I think governments around the world, in Washington, in Beijing, in India, in every European capital, all governments are preoccupied by a major economic problem at home. There is one important government, whether in Tokyo or Beijing or Delhi or Washington or Brussels or London or any of the other European capitals where leaders have any time for foreign policy. Their entire preoccupation is at home. And the record of almost every single leader is terrible. I don't know if you can give me one exception to this rule. Because in the last year, no government around the world has been able to come out with a policy that would reverse the trend. And fact is that the global economy is in serious trouble, and we are all grappling with trying to reverse that in our own way. Part of the problem is because national governments can only function nationally. Measures that national governments are taking are beginning to hurt other countries. There is an element of beggar thy neighbor in the solutions being offered. And I think the challenge for world leadership is to prevent that. And certainly in India, the huge collapse in our export markets in the last year has meant that the current account deficit has shot up. It's a major challenge for the government. Inflation has gone up because of energy prices internationally being very high. Food prices have gone up because there are drought conditions all over the world, including the United States. So given all these constraints and the politics of coalition, which Secretary Cohen referred to, you have a government whose space of maneuver is limited. And therefore, my expectation is that till there is some relief on the economic side, as till growth numbers begin to improve, there is some improvement on economic indicators, politically governments will feel paralyzed. They need to show some positive results of policy intervention to be able to then take the next steps. And that's the phase in which countries around the world are. I don't think India is an exception to that rule. With those words, these are all general remarks. I know 10 minutes is crazy, but I'm willing to take questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much to all three speakers. We have, I think, heard a friendly but still adequately fierce debate here, at least sub rosa, and I'm not going to too much abuse because we are going to run out of time quickly. I'm going to just put 3 questions on the table, which I don't actually necessarily, well, in fact, I'll ask you not to answer them right now, but in the course of our discussion, if you have a chance, I think it might be interesting to come back to them. One is, and this will come, we might have been doing this already, but George, how do you answer Secretary Cohen's implicit argument that we should spend too much time talking about closing the barn door when forces out of it, if I understood that correctly. Secretary Cohen, I was rather interested in your talk a little about sort of the manic depressive nature of U.S. expectations, and it just started me thinking about, there are a few countries that are kind of neuralgic. Well, there's only one country I think this is kind of neuralgic in U.S. politics, and that's Israel. But truly special relationship. But at times one gets a sense that other countries will become that way too. And India is interesting in that regard in American politics. I don't know what I'm asking, but I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about how that's going to be in the future. And then finally, Sanjaya, you expressed, by the way, I've never seen my role as a staff member of the IISS in any way incompatible with being a sort of patriotic, even partisan nationalist American. But you did express, not to simplify, but what seemed to be not characteristically, at least recognizably Indian perspective when you talked about the arbitrary, the NPT representing a kind of arbitrary freeze between haves and have-nots. But I guess the question is how, it seems to me this is very important for India. And I wonder if Indians have really figured this out. How do you articulate any principle of non-proliferation? How do you talk about it that's not based on this kind of inherent inequality? Now that's, again, not saying you can put the horse back in the barn, but there's no way you can, but that seems to be a responsibility of Indians to think about and talk about. Anyway, but I'm not going to ask you to answer that right now because we don't have a whole lot of time. If you have a chance to come to these questions in the end, I'll be grateful. But let me open it to the floor. Yes, you, sir.
So my question is for Mr. Sanjay Baru. There was a recent front page story in the Washington Post about Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and how he has become a tragic figure in India, and you were quoted in that story. So I was just wondering if you could comment a little bit about that, about the appropriateness of the story and whether you think you were quoted out of context or you stand by the comments you made. Thank you.
I was actually going to collect questions, but I'm not going to give you that much time. So,
You know, I don't want to take time. Let me just set out the facts. First of all, Simon Denier, who was the correspondent, called me about 3 months back in July when I was on a holiday in Venice and said, I'm writing an article on Manmohan Singh, can I interview you? I said, sorry, I'm in Venice and I have this mobile phone, but I pay for it myself, so I'm not going to spend money in my holiday giving you an interview. He said, no, I'll send you an email, can you reply to that? So I said, all right. Then he sent me an email which had actually 2 quotes from an article that appeared in a magazine called Caravan, which was published in 2011, which had quoted me. And in fact, I'll tell you what the 2 quotes were. The first quote was what he is trying to play around with, which is that Manmohan Singh's image has gone from one to a man who was respected. And I use the word respect. Actually respected as a man. I remember the first time President Bush met Manmohan Singh in September 2004 in New York, he began the conversation by saying, I'm happy to meet you, sir. And a lot of people then told me that Mr. Bush doesn't refer to too many people as sir. He didn't say Mr. Prime Minister or Dr. Singh. He kept referring to him as sir. So he kind of has an image of being a professor and elderly. And I said that his image had gone from being one who was respected to one who is now ridiculed, as you can see on Twitter and on the internet. But the second quote was, I said that Manmohan Singh's personal life is a greater story than that of President Obama. Many people don't know this because he refused to make it a public thing. He spent his first 12 years of his childhood in a village which had no electricity, no drinking water, no school, no hospital. He had to walk every day 10 miles to get to school in the next village and walk back. He was orphaned. His mother died when he was 6 months old. He was brought up by his grandmother. And at the age of 12, they migrated from that village. At the age of 22, he got a scholarship to go to Oxford. So he was a guy who spent 12 years of his life in a village, going to a village school. And within 10 years was in a position to earn a scholarship to go to Oxford. And then he got the Adam Smith Prize, he got a PhD, and you know, it's a fantastic. I said all this. So what does Simon sent me an email with all those quotes and says, can I use all these? So I said, sure, I mean, I said this, Caravan has published it, you're most welcome to use these quotes. But please contextualize them because I had said all this last year. And I assume you refer to the fact that it was published in Caravan. But you saw what he wrote. He doesn't refer to the Caravan, and now Washington Post has apologized. They have now said that it originally appeared in Caravan. He, of course, didn't use the positive quotes. He only used the part where I said Manmohan Singh's image has gone from being a man who's respected to a man who's ridiculed. And it appeared as if I had said that to him, which is not the case. And I had this long paragraph in which it sets the context. And I asked him. So I think he was not very professional. If I was Washington Post, I would pull him up for a lack of professionalism. It's now been proved that the second quote from Ram Guha was similarly taken from Caravan and without permission from Ram Guha. He has quoted a Goldman Sachs staffer, and Goldman Sachs has put out a press release saying that the staffer didn't say this to Mr. Denier. So we already had there are 4 quotes in the story. 3 people have dissociated themselves. We are waiting for the 4th one. Let's see what he has to say. Anyway, so I think it's not a seriously done job. It's not a very professional job. It's become fashionable now to criticize Manmohan Singh. He's in many ways seen as someone who's let people down by not pushing through economic reforms, by not taking some of the tough decisions. Much like, I was reading this morning's report of President Obama, 40% rating, the sharp fall in his popularity. As I said earlier, you look at politicians around the world. David Cameron in London is battling for his position. European leaders are completely paralyzed. They are unable to do the tough things. So Europe has become paralyzed. The Chinese are in a bad situation. So we are in a difficult phase globally because the global economy is going through a very tough time, and political leaders don't have the political space to take the tough decisions. So I think if that was the perspective Washington Post had given, rather than simply to say this guy has become, it's a very negative article. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think what I'm going to do now, with an eye on the clock, is collect maybe 3 questions. I'm sorry, I can't do any more. And I see 2 of them right now, and then revert to the panel. Also, they have a chance to answer my questions at each of this point. So, you, sir.
Hi, Dan Horner from Austin Control today. Mr. Baru, you mentioned the comment from Senator Kerry and indicated you would have to conclude this agreement under President Bush's administration. Can you say what India then do differently with the concessions they hadn't planned to do before, were willing to compromise, or what exactly was the change in their attitude as a result of this comment from Senator Kerry? Thanks.
Thank you. And there was somebody more or less in the middle, I think. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Zia from Princeton University. I think it's appropriate to say that the notion that the speakers have presented that India has not proliferated, where they've used the definition of selling on nuclear technology, would mean that Iran also has not proliferated. Whereas the fact of the matter is, as people should know, the Nuclear Suppliers Group was created because India used a reactor provided to it for peaceful purposes to make plutonium for weapons. The large structure of the non-proliferation and export control regime that exists today is because of proliferation by India to develop its nuclear weapons. And so following Secretary Cohen's position, one of the things that I think is worth developing is what should the Nuclear Suppliers Group do now that India seeks to be a member when all the other members of the Nuclear Suppliers Group do not make material for nuclear weapons that India does? Should that not be a condition for membership?
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, right there. And I'll take also from that one.
Maybe the topper for Secretary Cohen. Where do you rank this when you and administration are trying to put together an Indian policy? There are obviously a lot of different interests within India, between the United States, business and government, our own pivot in the Pacific, et cetera. When you talk about these proliferation issues, just how far you want to go in this thing makes the question I'm asking.
And finally, there was a lady right here. I'm sorry for those who are off the floor.
Emma Newell from LinkTank. I was just wondering if the decision by the Nuclear Suppliers Group to include India led to disrespect of the nuclear non-proliferation regime as a whole.
Okay, well, we have 4 very good, very sharp questions on the table, possibly 3 fuzzier ones for me. Why don't we go in key order of the original speakers, starting with George, Secretary Cohen, and Sanjaya.
Well, let me pick up your question again, because I think it addresses some. I wasn't either trying to relitigate the nuclear deal or close the barn door after it was out, nor am I suggesting that it's desirable or feasible to turn off nuclear power in India. What I was suggesting what I would suggest is that the nuclear deal, naturally for political and economic and other reasons, involved a lot of happy talk to get it done. And it involved a lot of ignorance, some of it willful, some of it not. Things have happened since then we should learn from. And it's precisely because it does have nuclear power, it is going forward, that we ought to pay attention to these problems. Is it safe? Do they have a structure, a regulatory structure to make it safe? Lots of people thought nothing could happen in Japan. It's an advanced technological society, it's very well regulated, it's got a wonderful infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. We know the penalty that the people of Japan are paying for not having adequate structured regulatory system. There is evidence, which again no one's addressed, that India has at least a difficult regulatory challenge from the safety point of view. I'm saying let's address that. Similarly, Sanjaya, I'm not saying India would want to proliferate as a state to any other country. No one would say that. That isn't generally how proliferation happens in the 21st century. It is like the Cohen network, but it was the Tinner family Swiss, the German Lurch, South Africa, the Turks, the Spaniards, the Malaysians, businessmen, guys with machine shops, companies that make vacuum pumps. And so the issue is how good is the system to be able to educate all of its enterprises and then enforce those rules. That's what it's not about somebody in the PMO and South Block saying, oh yes, let's go sell country gas. And none of that has been addressed. The issue of implementation and what's being done to, in practice, make this, make India a constructive player as its infrastructure grows and its capability grows. And that's not a relitigating, saying, okay, now we're here, what do we do? Similarly, no one's addressed the issue, but the question was asked about what to do about the NSG. And it seems to me, until a lot of these other questions are resolved, and until things are clarified, the Zia's question, for example, is addressed, that there should be a hold on additional membership in the NSG. It is a big deal if all of the members of the NSG are no longer producing new material for nuclear weapons. To admit somebody who still is making material for new nuclear weapons. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm saying at least you ought to really consider it and have a debate about it and look at the international application. I've been to Brazil. I've been to probably 25 countries where I talk to leaders there, and they're pissed about all this. I don't say it at a high level, but you know, one of the objectives that the U.S. has pushed very hard is the additional protocol, tightening the inspection. Lula, after the nuclear deal with India, said, I will never agree to that. These guys blasted their way into the benefits that the U.S. has now given them, and you want to tighten the controls on us? I'll never agree to that. And there were other implications. Okay, fine. So then that's done. But membership in the NSG is not done. And you should at least assess the implications of that before taking that next step. That's all I'm trying to say.
Would you say this about other regimes such as the MPCR? And
yeah, I don't follow the Bosner and the Australia group as closely. With the Australia group and chemical weapons, I think it would be again an implementation issue. What are the capacities to actually make that meaningful participation? And the missile technology forwarding. There, I don't know the details of it, but there I think, to my mind, are less normative issues and more practical issues that the existing countries have about what information you share and intelligence you share and so on. But I think on the nuclear issue, there's more of that.
Let me address a couple of issues that were raised today. Number one, I must take issue with the notion that because President Obama, as Senator Obama, or because there were some Democrats who opposed this particular deal, somehow they should be punished now that they're in the White House. If we're going to play partisan politics, we are in for a very rough time in our future relationship. So even if there were members, I'm not sure Senator Biden may have been against proliferation when you were working for him, and I'm not sure how he would feel about this now, but the fact is, once it's passed, once it becomes the policy of the United States, you don't look to see who gets rewarded and who gets punished, depending on who's in the White House. So I take issue with that. I think that we have to say this was done to build a better strategic relationship with India, and we want to pursue that. And whether the president voted against it as a senator or not really should not be a relevant factor. And so it's not a case of crime or punishment or that of reward. Secondly, Sanjaya said that Iran, to get to your question, Iran is a red herring. I must tell you, I find it hard to understand how a country could have a covert program for 17 years and say that they're simply undertaking to produce peaceful nuclear power for commercial purposes, to construct pharmaceutical companies and develop pharmaceuticals for their people. The notion that you have a covert program for 17 years and then only admit it after it's been exposed, and then do everything in your power to frustrate the IAEA in terms of its inspection. I mean, frankly, I'm thinking of the song, I think it was Aretha Franklin, Who's Zooming Who, in this particular case. If Iran wants to produce nuclear power for commercial purposes, Russia has offered them a way out of this. Russia says, we'll do the reprocessing. You'll have your nuclear power plants. You'll have all the safeguards. We'll do the reprocessing. And Iran has said no. And so they maintain that they insist that they have this right to develop nuclear power and nuclear weapons if they choose to do so. If they are a signatory, by the way. So I find it hard to accept any proposition, give them any benefit of doubt. This is only a benign operation and production for them. So I think it's not a red herring. I think it's serious. I think that this is going to be an issue which, depending on what happens with Iran, how far they go or are willing to go, I think India has played a role that could play a bigger role. I understand the dilemma that it faces in terms of its supply of energy. There have been promises made by the Saudis and others to make up any deficiencies coming out of Iran, to the Chinese as well. I think this is going to have very serious consequences and have an impact. I can't say it will disrail the relationship. I think it'll have an impact in terms of what happens on India's treatment of Iran. Because Sanjaya is right. Iran has stated publicly and has taken success saying they are opposed, absolutely opposed to Iran getting a nuclear weapon. And the next issue is, well, okay, if you're opposed, then what are you willing to do? And you're not willing to take these other steps, much as the Chinese. I say the same thing to the Chinese. If you really are opposed to that, you really play the China card now. You can really play the China card by going to the Iranians who have been able to split the Security Council. As long as they can split the Security Council, they'll continue to do what they're doing. But China has a real interest also as an energy source of supply for energy. But they're in a position to put more pressure on Iran, saying enough. We'll help you achieve your stated goal of peaceful nuclear power. But we are going to join the United States and the other members of the international community in that part. So I think that's a real test coming up. And the final point about the nature of the relationship between the United States and India, where do we go? And another song came to mind, The Thrill Is Gone. But the friendship lingers on. Now, the friendship lingers on because, number one, whether out of desire or necessity. We have to. India is a big country. It's going to have a big role in our future, in the world's future. And right now they're struggling, like as Sanjaya pointed out, many of us are struggling, but they are in a particular point right now that it's going to improve. They have the intellectual capital, they have the talent and the drive and the ambition to do this. It's taking a bit longer. And we have many issues that we're going to work with on, whether it's counterterrorism or counter-proliferation or counter-piracy or climate change, energy security, health, science, technology. All of these issues need a big stake in working together. So the relationship is going to continue to improve, and it has improved. Military to military has gotten very strong. It will get stronger, I think, just because of what's going on in the world. So I'm discouraged at points, but ultimately very optimistic this relationship is going to ultimately flourish. India will maintain its non-aligned status, but there will be ways in which they will find that they will have to work with the United States, and we will have to work with them. Interestingly enough, I didn't hear any debate in the Republican during the Republican convention. I didn't hear a word between the Democratic ones to date about India. Now, there are issues, I think President Clinton may have hinted at last night, or someone did, about visa issues affecting India. That affects our interests as well. But basically, you've got one of the strongest caucuses on Capitol Hill, the India-U.S. caucus. It can only get stronger. So ultimately, ultimately, the relationship will flourish. It's just going to take longer. I'm going to go through a lot of ups and downs, but we'll see.
Keep an eye on the clock.
First of all, there are three issues: non-proliferation, Iran, and U.S. India relations. Very good to me. Non-proliferation. Look, I mean, as I said, there's been more than a decade we've heard all these arguments in this city. And finally, a view was taken that in Washington D.C. that India is a responsible stakeholder. I think the U.S. has to take a view. Does it treat India as a responsible stakeholder or not? It's up to the United States to decide that. The track record is there, the evidence is there. You decide India is not a responsible stakeholder, fine. We live in a world in which then we don't do much business. But the evidence on the ground, as far as proliferation is concerned, as far as the safety of Indian nuclear weaponry is concerned, is evidence which the Bush administration accepted as good enough to enter into the civil nuclear agreement. New skeletons will be removed from the ground and you want to refresh them. It's a call the US has to take. Whether it wants to work with India in the 21st century or doesn't want to work with India. From India's side, I think the position has been very clearly stated that we want to work with the United States. And this was the one major barrier because you look at all the trade, the US-China trade is so much higher because there's so many areas in which we are not able to do trade with Europe, whether it depends on the high technology because of the export controls. Is to remove those export controls and to actually build a stronger economic relationship that we wanted this nuclear deals out of the way. So I think the non-proliferation argument is an old argument. It will be made again and again and again. But the facts of the ground have to be seen, and US authorities must take a view. I as an Indian would say track record is good. If you disagree, then if you shape the American policy, we will live with that. I don't think there's anything else we can do except to live with that. On Iran again, I mean, it's not just oil, Secretary Cohen. It's true that Saudi Arabia can give us more oil. But there is a security issue. There is the whole region, Persian Gulf, access to Afghanistan, access to Central Asia. There are lots of security issues revolving around the India-Iran relationship. I don't think we can expect India to give up its security interests in the region merely because there is political pressure coming from the government going into an election. Because we know very well that even within the US administration, there are different opinions. And we know that. We know that there are different opinions on Iran and how to deal with Iran. There are different lobbies who are exerting different kinds of pressures. So, I think at the end of the day, the Indian government's view would be defined by its larger security interest in the region, the consequence of what will happen in Afghanistan, what is happening in Central Asia and across the border in China. It's a long-term security dilemma for India, and therefore to expect India to stand up and take an unequivocal position, not realistic. I mean, you can expect that, but it's not realistic. Finally, 2 minutes on US-India relations. I have been intimately involved with US-India relations now for more than a decade. In fact, I got to know George because he and I were members of a India-US track 2 dialogue which began in 2000 when the Vajpayee government was there, Next Steps in Strategic Partnership initiative. And at the end of these 12 years, I think what that dialogue, both at the track 2 level and track 1 and in the media, etc., what all this has shown us is that as we go into the 21st century, given what's happening in the Western Hemisphere, in Europe, in Asia, the US has been looking around and saying, who are likely to be our friends given these challenges? There are 1, 2, 3, or 4 challenges. We have been looking around the world and said, these are the challenges we are likely to face, and who's likely to be on our side? And I think the fact is that those who think long term have come to the view that in the long term, the US needs India as much as India needs the US, given the way in which the world is evolving. I think that's the basis of the strategic relationship. Year to year, there could be change. From administration to administration, there would be change. The Republican Party has, under President Bush, took a much more favorable view than the first 2 years of President Obama. I think it's not just nuclear deal. The problems, you look at what happened in the first 2 years, President Obama's visit to China, the joint statement from Beijing, the Holbrooke mission into Pakistan. I mean, there's a lot of problems that set back the relationship. Part of the reason why the honeymoon of the nuclear deal very quickly ended was because in between 2008, apart from the Yemen crisis and the financial crisis, which got both governments preoccupied, we had a series of incidents, the Beijing declaration, the Holbrooke mission, etc., and various statements coming out of the State Department, which kind of shocked Indians out of this honeymoon. They said, my God, the bride is on the way. Honeymoon was over, or rather the groom has run away. Anyway, so I think you will have these hiccups, changes in administration, changes in leadership in the State Department or in the Defense Department, or for that matter in India. I mean, you asked the question, what is it that changed with Senator Kerry's meeting? The government changed. I mean, the government that was in office in March 2008 was a government which was there with the support of the communists, who were opposed to the India-US strategic partnership. And they were in fact advocating that we should get closer to China. And the communists then quit the coalition. A new political partner came into the coalition, so the nature of the government changed. And that was a huge price Manmohan Singh paid, which was to risk the fall of his government, because he had to go into Parliament in July 2008 and get a new mandate to continue the negotiations with the US. So that was the change. There was a huge political change in India that enabled the deal to be finally started. So we will have these hiccups, political hiccups in India, we'll have in the US. We will have issues on which we will disagree. Iran will be one of them. I know, because as I said, we have security concerns that are fundamental to our future stability in the region. But in the long run, I think the leadership, the political and intellectual leadership in these two countries have recognized that these are two democracies that will have to work together. Many may not like the face of Indians. Many Indians may not like the NDT. We did an opinion poll last week. I don't know if it was reported here. It showed that 61% of Indians want better relations with the United States. But that is down from 76% in 2008. When the nuclear deal was being done, the approval rating for US was 76%. We have come down from 76 to 61, but 61 is still high. So there are a lot of Indians who want better relations with the US. Hopefully there are equal number who want better relations with India. But that doesn't mean we'll agree on everything.
Well, thank you very much. This is the first meeting I've chaired at this office of the IISS. I failed to bring it to a conclusion on time. I succeeded brilliantly, however, in providing a really excellent and fascinating panel, for which we can only thank the panelists.
No, I'm at I'll be at
I hope